Impro Theater and the cast and crew of this online performance would like to take this time to honor the indigenous peoples of the ancestral and unceded homelands we each inhabit, and to consider the legacy of colonization and its far-reaching effects.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Whether you're watching or listening, I appreciate it. Today, I'm so excited. My guest is Ashley Ward, actress, singer, writer, snack enthusiast, and a Jeopardy champion. Ashley was most recently seen as Delivery Dolores on Hello, Jack, the Kindness Show on Apple TV+. And we're going to get to the bottom of some things with Ashley right now, but please welcome Ashley Ward.
I'm so scared.
You should not be scared.
Getting to the bottom of what?
Well, the police are involved. Ashley Ward is a native of Georgia, and you
That's
can hear
right.
it in her Georgia lilt.
It's true.
How are
Conyers,
you
Georgia.
doing? How's everything?
I mean, how's anyone doing in this pre-apocalyptic, post-pandemic world?
If you're listening or watching in sometime in the future, we're recording this in 2022, and the pandemic still exists. I remember, Ashley, like a year ago in interviews being like, well, if you're listening to this in 2022, we were still in a pandemic when we recorded this. And I'm like, oh, that didn't.
Yeah. Wasn't that quaint? Wasn't it sweet when we thought it would end?
How sweet. How sweet.
I'm doing okay. I mean, I feel like I'm generally an upbeat gal.
Yeah.
So I'm generally doing fine, but it's sort of it's a dark time. You feel a bit frivolous to be an upbeat gal in a dark time.
Did you, when we met in Los Angeles, you revealed to me that we had met years earlier.
Oh my God, I remember it. Do you remember? Do you remember exactly what happened? Because I do.
So I've been some friends and my family know this about me, but not a lot of other people do. But I've been teaching improv since I started doing improv when I was in college. I've been also teaching, weirdly, because there was nobody else around. The guy that taught me said, like, okay, now you have to teach people, and I was off and running. And I've been teaching at the Educational Theater Association International Thespian Society international event, conference, festival thing for decades, and then subsequently at many states high school thespian things. So like there were certain states that I would go to again and again and again, like Texas and Georgia and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Utah and a bunch of other places. And so through the years, I would like go to an improv festival somewhere as an adult person with my adult people's improv group or something, and somebody would come up to me and say, like, did you teach at the International Thespian blah 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 blah? And then it would sometimes happen like on the subway in New York. I remember I distinctly remember like 3 different times when it happened. It probably happened more, but who knows, where an adult person, like, with a beard and mustache and whatever, but you know what I mean? Like a full-on adult person would walk up to me, and I think I'm still a youth. And they'd say, like, when I was a child, you taught me improv at my, state thespian thing or whatever. Anyway, so there I am at Meltdown Comics Nerdist School in the green room, talking to the other faculty members about the faculty show we're about to do. And Ashley springs this on me.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the ramp up to it was, I think I think we were coming on stage and you were going off or something. I just remember I passed you in that little hallway before you would enter.
Right. I think maybe you were doing Baby Wants Candy then.
I don't even know what
I was
doing
maybe
some
Big Black
show. Big
Car.
Black Car. We were doing Big
You
Black
were doing
Car.
Big Black Car, and we were coming off of
And
Baby.
I was like, I saw you and I was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And I go on stage and do my show because I had to, and do the show and come back and you were still in the green room. Thank God. It was some kind of festival maybe or something that was at Nerd. Yeah,
no,
people were ushering you out the door.
It was the thing. It was the all school assembly.
Yes, exactly.
Which is like a marathon of shows.
Right. And I come back and I said, I cannot, I can't make, I have a memory of grabbing you before I went on stage. I don't know if that memory is right. And said like, oh my God, I know you were at the Georgia. I think it was more in the green room. I think in my mind, that's what I wanted to do, but I was like, that makes no sense where it's dark. And then it's weird, like don't grab people in dark hallways. That's not okay. And so then I come back and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. You know, you taught at the Thespian Festival or you didn't. I don't even know if you taught. If you taught, I did not take the class, or if I did, I did not participate. But you did a show. And I mean, I remember the show. It was you and several dudes. Figure that, the late 80s in improv, that it was just dudes.
Right.
And y'all had come from Wisconsin, I think. It was either Michigan or Wisconsin because I always confused them.
Okay, so this was at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana
That was a separate one.
Okay,
well, no, because I went to the Georgia Thespian Conference my freshman year, and then I also went to Ball State. So I could be conflating them. Anyway, I know for a fact I saw you in Georgia and at Ball State, and y'all did like Madrigal, and you did I wish I could remember the other games. That's the one that stuck out the most to me because I was like
conducted story.
Probably. And I just couldn't even believe what I was seeing. And I was like, well, this is amazing. I of course could never do this. This is not within my realm. And I'll tell you something, I hope it doesn't embarrass you. But you were my first improv crush. You were everyone in my theater troops crush. We talked about you for years. Oh, my sister, I guarantee you, I will tell my sister, she saw that I was doing a show with you like years ago, whenever the first time we did a show at Nerdist, and she was like, you're doing a show with Mike Rock? Like, are you serious right now? And I was like, yeah, no, it's amazing. It's incredible. But at that point, I think I had done a few shows with you, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot the moment of me running into you and being like, holy crap, my whole like world has exploded, and I was so excited. You inspired a young Jack McBrayer to pursue. I was sitting next to him watching you perform madrigals at the Georgia Thespian Festival. Everyone was just thought you hung the moon and just were the best in the whole world. And like, you had this whole secret underground teen girl fandom that you probably didn't even know.
I didn't. And people are going to think that I've arranged this conversation.
100% not. I was hesitant to even say, because like, I don't want to embarrass you or make you feel weird. And you were just the dreamiest dreamboat. We all just thought you were like king of the world. True story.
You're very kind. I remember seeing Jack in auditions in New York and not knowing why I knew him. And he knew me, like he called me. I remember like he's one of those, we have this as actors, when you see the same, tend to see the same people all the time at auditions just because of types and that sort of thing. And he was just one of those people that I never like had to like in a waiting room say like, oh, I'm Mike, I'm Jack, blah, blah. We never had that actual, he just knew my name, and I heard somebody call him his name. And I was like, oh, Jack, okay. And we just became like audition room acquaintances. And it wasn't for years that you cracked the code and said like, no, the reason he knows you is because this thing. Oh,
it's so true.
Well, that is charming. And I didn't realize, I thought it was just Georgia. I didn't realize you'd also seen us, because Ball State was the only that international when the festival was there, and now it's back in Indiana after decades. But That was the only time I actually brought other performers with me. I brought,
Oh,
I
okay.
had,
So that must have been where I saw that show.
yeah,
Okay.
five guys from Wisconsin got in a station wagon and drove down to the where I was teaching and agreed to do a show. So
You know what I blew today? What I totally screwed up? That was a really terrible setup for what I'm. I have the T-shirt from the 1988 International Thespian Conference in
wow.
my bedroom. I still have it. It
Oh,
has holes in it. I don't care. I won't let it go. I love that T-shirt.
should
I
demand
should have had it right here. I should have been able to like. That would have been really cool, but I'm not cool like that.
So were you in high school, were you already like a theater kid, performing arts? This is my thing.
Yeah, I was.
Had that started young? I always I find myself asking people in these conversations, like, were you the kid in the neighborhood, getting everybody together to do shows in the backyard and that sort of thing?
In a way, yeah. Like my mom was in a band when I was a little girl, like just a sort of they played at a club in Atlanta called Not Quite Cricket. Like what a and the name of her band was Everyday People.
Oh,
Um
that's so great. That's a reference to a 70s song, Sly and the Family Stone,
yeah.
I think.
Everyone in the band was white though, so it was an odd reference to a 70s song. But uh and so she always was singing, and so she was always encouraging me to sing. And so then I went, at church I would sing in the choir, and we would do these shows, uh horrible shows. I don't know if you've ever seen a church children or youth choir show, but they're these scripted things. They've got to be a multi-million-dollar business, and they're absolute trash. Just sorry if
Oh,
you're
you mean
watching and you
like your local church buys the rights to do a particular production
yes,
okay.
they have their version of Samuel French, and they like put out these like one of them was called Let's Go to the Rock, and it was a like modern teens talking to their parents who were, and they're like, you don't understand the pressures, and they're like, we don't, and then we go back to the 50s and we find out they know
But the parents
how it
do
is.
actually know how it is.
Yeah. And so Let's Go to the Rock, and it was very like 50s style music. It was insane. They're all really bad. All of them are
Let's
bad.
go to the rock. So St. Peter, so upon this rock you shall build my church. What's happening?
No, we never reference that in the show. It's like, let's go to the rock. Jesus is the rock. Jesus
Okay,
is
so
the rock. That's
right,
like
Jesus
those were the
is the rock.
lyrics.
Got it.
Yeah. And yeah, it was really bad. And I did a lot of those. And then in I think it was right after third grade, the community theater in my town, the Depot Players, um, decided in the summer to do a children's show, meaning a show with kids in it, not a show just for kids, called Archie and Mahitable. It was a musical about I'm trying to remember what the name of the guy. It's based on these short stories. It's about like a cockroach and a cat who become best friends.
Ah,
Makes perfect sense.
yeah.
And I auditioned for it and I got it. And I was and I think that was it. Like that was because like I think the stuff I was doing at church, it was like, well, this is a church thing. But then I was like, now I'm doing theater.
Yeah. Like what if you're 8, 9, 10 years old and you get cast in a show that's not in school or not in church, that feels legit. Like that.
It does.
I remember feeling like, wait a minute, this isn't something that my friends at school are able to do or whatever, and not open to everybody.
Yeah.
I earned this.
Yeah. That was how it felt. And it was super fun. And I was the youngest one, so I loved that because everyone else was older. And so, then you feel even extra cool.
That was the coolest thing in my town as a kid. Also, just like being around the big kids, or being like, because it was like college students and adults and stuff. In my case, I just remember feeling so I don't know, cool.
Yeah.
Like on the inside or whatever.
Yeah. That's exactly how it was. And it's so funny because some of the people in that show went on to careers in showbiz. One is like a big, like he was a writer, but now he's like, I think more of an executive producer type guy who does lots of different stuff, which is just so weird when you think about my little town and this play like a million years ago, and people who are like in LA still doing it. It's just Crazy.
It's Conyers, Georgia.
That is, yeah. It's basically between Atlanta and Athens, if you know where
Yeah.
either of those places are.
Sure.
It's like I think it's about 35 minutes southeast of Atlanta. I think originally kind of a bedroom. Well, originally it was built around the train. It was like a little station town. I guess I don't know
Hence
what you
the
call them.
Depot Players.
Exactly. We played in the train depot where when a train would go by, what we would do to mitigate that, because literally we were on the tracks and we were right by the tracks, is they would take the lights to half and we would all freeze. Because I mean, it's a train. So like the room would shake and you would just be like, no matter what was going on, you're just frozen. And then as soon as it was gone and the bell ended, you would go, the lights would go up and you would resume.
That's kind of genius. I like that.
It's pretty cute. It was hard to wrap your head around as a child doing your first theater, like, oh, so every subsequent thing, like, so when do we freeze? When do we dim the lights to half? And
that's so funny. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a cute little town, and there was sort of like the old town part, which was very cute and still is, and then the town kind of grew as like a bedroom community for Atlanta. And we had like some industry, like Sweetheart Plastics was there, and Maxell, the cassette and I guess video VCR play, or what do you call them, videotape manufacturer. They had a plant there. So it had like some industry, but a lot of it was people who were commuting to work in Atlanta. And yeah, we had 2 high schools at the time.
You did? Wow. It's probably bigger now.
Much bigger. Yeah.
And when so you're going through school, did you continue doing, like, you must have been busy doing shows all the time between church, community theater, and anything happening at school. Were you one of those, were you like the theater version of a hockey or football kid that parents are forever shuttling around to different rehearsals and things?
I kind of was, except for the fact that was the only community theater show I ever did. They really never did shows again that I could audition for. And I don't know if that was like I just was ignoring it, which I find hard to believe, or maybe it shuttered for a little while. I don't know exactly what happened, but like I never did another show there.
Wow.
And so I would just do church, and then like I would do it in middle school and then in high school. And our high school theater department was very like, it was a good theater department for a, dinky public high school. And
was there a point at church? Was there a point where the show, where the I mean, I don't know if it's okay to call it performing at church, but like singing and stuff. Was there a point at which it became like, okay, I'm singing in the choir. We make beautiful choral music. I'm not going to do dorky shows where we wear a fake beard and play the Three Wise Men, or like.
I still did them, and it was partly because the choir director that I'd had since 3rd grade was like, he was like counting on me, kind of thing, And my mom was like, no, you have to do the church shows. And then we would go on choir tour in the summer, where we would do these shows, and like, when I think about it now, it sounds absolutely insane. But we would go in a bus and we would go to different cities. Like we went as far as to like somewhere in Virginia, I know, one time, because we went to King's Dominion, which is like an amusement park that's either in Ohio or Virginia. I can't remember. But and we would just go to the church, and families from the church would be like, yeah, they can stay at our house. So people we'd never met would take in a child or two to like stay with them for the night or so. And these people are not vetted. I mean, they're members of the church, but like, read a paper. Like, members of the church are doing creepy things all the time. And we're just like staying with these, and everyone's like, this is great. This makes sense. We love this. Keep doing it.
To say nothing of a strange kid who's going to eat all the Frosted Flakes in the morning.
Oh my God.
The family kids don't have a chance.
Great point.
Was that okay? Did you manage to sleep? Was it creepy for you, or did it feel like nightmarish, or?
It wasn't, I wasn't scared ever, but it was uncomfortable. I mean, like, weird. Staying at a stranger's house feels a little weird, like. and you don't feel like it's like make yourself at home. It's like, I don't know you. I met you like 2 minutes ago when we rode in the car from the church to your house. You can't make yourself at home. You know what I mean? Like, and then you're
Yes.
like spending the night there. It's just, it's odd. It's a little bit weird.
And the weird thing when you're a kid, when you're, and you know, obviously I'm guessing from how I know you that you were probably a nice and polite kid, that
I
when
was.
people say make yourself at home, you're also like, okay, but I mean, does that mean I can literally just go into the kitchen and root around for cookies, or can I not do that? Or does
Yeah.
that mean that can I turn on the TV anytime I want? Can I how much does make yourself at home mean make yourself at
Right.
home? Like,
Can I like Porky Pig it to the kitchen in the middle of the night if I need if I need a little snack?
right. What toys are off limits, and yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
Man. But that's the life of a troubadour, of a itinerant theater person anyway.
It's true.
Do you have any favorite shows from high school? Because high school is pretty formative for people who end up in a career in the arts.
I'm trying to think. I mean, there were a lot of shows I liked. We did The Robber Bridegroom when I was a senior, and I really liked that show. I've seen it since, and I'm like, it's not that good of a show. It's fine.
I thought you were going to say I've seen it since, so they just did not do it the way we did.
We really did justice to it. It is like the farthest I ever got in any like New York theater audition for like legit New York theater was they did a revival of The Robber Bridegroom, and it was right before I moved to LA. And in fact, we delayed my trip because I got a call back for it, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is I like Alfred Urey, who wrote the book of it, was in the room. Alex Timber, who like famously directed Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, among other things, was the director. It was like a crazy, crazy experience. And I was like, this is fated. This is going to happen. I didn't get it, but yeah, I don't know. That's always had a special place in my heart. And then when I was a freshman, I did a show called The Good Doctor by Neil Simon.
Yeah.
Which was the only straight, well, no, I did Amadeus too, which I did not like. But I mean, it was fine. It was whatever. It's like, why are high school children doing Amadeus? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But I liked that, and I think it's because I got to do this like big comedic stuff in it, and that was really fun to me. And yeah, and maybe Godspell, because that's the first show Jack and I did together, and I think it really forged our now 30-something year friendship.
I remember. So you were auditioning in New York a lot. You did off-Broadway stuff and that kind of thing. So you weren't. I'm guessing you weren't intimidated going into those rooms to do a song and a couple of sides. And
oh my God, I was so intimidated.
Were you really?
Oh my God, yes. I was so, because it was like, I went to a conservatory. I have a degree, a BFA in musical theater, and a lot of those programs, mine included, I think the thing they do to you freshman year is they're like, all right, we're taking the people who were the big dogs at their high school. So our job is to kind of break them down so we can build them back up better. And I don't think I think I was already kind of broken down. So it was like I was mashed into a fine paste.
Oh God.
And then sort of built back up into a soft hill. So I kind of never got, I always felt like I'm not good enough for this. I'm never going to get this. I just always had like a lot of self-doubt. And I think that was part of why I was attracted to improv, was it was like, I could kind of forge my own path a bit more. And as I certainly have felt intimidated doing improv shows and have felt nervous doing improv shows, I think that's just maybe part of who I am, is that I'm always going to have that to some extent. But it did build my confidence a lot. And some of that transferred over to other things. But by and large, I don't think I ever felt like, yeah, look out world, here I come. I was sort of like, if I'm here, is it okay? You've asked me to.
It's so funny to hear you say that. because I think a lot of us feel that way and hide it really well, or hide it pretty well most of the time. Because I was just thinking the other day, for some reason, I think it was after I was talking to a student and helping them out with some aspect of something, and it just reminded me in retrospect. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember going through a couple of phases of like doubt or something, and then I realized the chasm between when you're on stage and feel like you're on top of the world and you know exactly what to do and what should happen next, and you're and at the same time you're flexible to whatever does happen, and you can freeze when a train goes by and pick up the cue right afterwards. You know what I mean? You feel fully present and confident and etc. Versus another situation, you are the same person, you have the same aptitude and experience, and yet you go into another situation which is in many ways very similar, like an audition or a callback or another show or something, or rehearsal or whatever, and suddenly you're all, like you said, you're paced like you're quivering, or you're, you know what I mean? It's such a weird, isn't it a weird concept?
It's so weird, and I don't know if I'd really ever thought about it that way before. And I think it's because there's like a like that other person has something you want. And so there are certain types of people, and one of them is someone who we know, Ptolemy Slocum.
Yeah.
Ptolemy is a person who, I don't know what he did, how he did it, but he just at some point was like, I don't care. And
Yeah.
he goes into auditions, and it's not that he doesn't care about the work, and it's not that he doesn't care about doing a good job. It's that when he goes into auditions, he does not care if he gets it or not. He doesn't care what they think. And that's not a platitude. That is 100% true, because I can remember in New York, my sister was really good friends with Ptolemy. And I'm good friends with him. But I can remember in New York, like hanging out with him and my sister one time, and he was like, I was like, we were like, Hayden was like, oh, don't you have a callback or something today? And he's like, yeah. And she was like, well, what time is that? And he was like, at 1:00, and it was like 4:00. And Hayden was like, well, don't you think you should go? And he's like, yeah, I'll go now. I'll go over there now. He just didn't care. Like, and it was he was like, oh, you're going to do a power move? I'm going to do a power move. What do you think about that? And he would get cast like crazy.
Yeah.
He also got banned from some casting offices, but that's one of those things where it's like, if you can find that thing for yourself and you can do it authentically and pull it off, I think it can work for you. I've never found that magical, like that is, I'm like breaking out in a sweat thinking about it. It's like makes me sick to my stomach because I think I'm too far the other way.
Yeah, I think my version of that is something that I've picked up from other people, which is to walk in saying, well, I mean, I know I have something to offer. I know I have value. Whether or not it fits into what you all want that's up to you. I can't control that. So I'm just going to do my thing. And,
is that how you start the audition before your slate?
I literally say, I'm just going to do my thing. And then I do a little salute. Typically I'm wearing like a armed forces uniform, like a generic community musical theater armed forces style uniform of some sort, right? A lot of rouge, almost.
That's gotta be.
Sometimes I'll have a musket. I don't know. It doesn't.
None of it matches.
Yeah, but as soon as we're into the scene, I'm into the scene, whatever.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, I think that's does that, yeah, I need a thing like that. I know I just made fun of your very nice thing that you do, which I think is great, because I think that is true. And I've been on the other side of the table where I'm helping to cast something, and like literally the thing that they always say, which is like, they want you to be good, they want you to be right for the part. It's 100% true, because it's like, yeah, I don't want to sit and watch a bunch of people that are terrible, but you also, like, being on the other side of it, you realize like, oh, I've realized things about myself where I'm just like, oh, I gotta stop doing that. Like, I gotta.
Like if you have to think of it this way, the casting people's job, then when you walk in and you're confident and good, they can put a check mark next to your name and like, at least we have someone who, you know,
Yeah.
did a good enough job and was, you know, confident or whatever. And they're, you know, you can solve part of their problem by giving them an option. You know, whether or
Yeah.
not it ends up being what's needed for the production is a side thing, but yeah.
That's a good way to think about it, because I can be gravy. I can come in and just be like, I may not be right for this, but I'm something. I'm gravy for something.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not for this meal.
That's that is a Southern way of looking at it right there. I remember I wasn't a musical. My mom was a musical theater person, and she directed and produced tons of community shows and stuff like that. So I'm a bit of I went the comedy route, as we know. But when I was in New York, there was a commercial. There was a casting director who did commercials and TV and theater, and I didn't really realize that in my earlier days in New York, that there were casting directors who did everything. I just kind of viewed like, oh, if I'm auditioning for this person for a commercial, that means they don't do anything else. Forgetting that, you know, you could be networking or whatever. You could be making
Right.
connections if you're, you know, not that I would act any differently, I guess. But anyway, so this one casting director called my agents and said like, hey, I want to recommend him for a musical audition. And my agent called me up like absolutely dumbfounded. So do you remember, I can't remember his name, Jim something. There was this guy that was like sort of like the main casting guy for Broadway musicals for years.
God, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but I know exactly who you're talking about.
And with me is casting director Jim Carnahan. Welcome, Jim. Thank you. I should start by saying that you are not only the casting director of the Roundabout Theater, but one of Broadway's preeminent casting directors, represented by several shows on Broadway.
She said, it'll just be you and the accompanist and the casting director. And I was like, oh, I can do that. I could go sing a song with an accompanist and like, who? Yeah, well, there's no pressure there. Well, that was not true. I go in and there were guys in the hallway in full-on period 1920s wardrobe and straw hats, like those boater hats, rehearsing by tap dancing in the hallway. And I was like, well, surely that's not my audition, because those guys can't possibly, because I'm in like street clothes.
Yeah.
And I go up, and sure enough, these three guys are all in the hallway waiting for the same audition that I am. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Well, anyway, this interview isn't about me, but there were 17 people behind the tables. This was for Thoroughly Modern Millie. So including Dick Scanlon, who co-wrote the movie, and Michael Mayer, the director, and Roger Bart was there, and what's her name, the little tiny Broadway singer,
Sutton Foster?
No, she wasn't there, but I don't think she was there. But
oh yeah, because I think she was the understudy. I think she
anyway,
ended up, that's what
it
made
was.
her.
I walked in and I couldn't possibly care. I was so intimidated. I was so terrified that I was like, well, this is.
There ain't no intimidation like AEA open call musical theater audition intimidation. That, oh, I mean, it's like, I can feel it. I can, like, it's so visceral. The thing of like, you're waiting and the girls are like, oh me, oh me, oh me, oh me, oh me, like doing their warm-ups and like stretching like their leg up to here and just like doing whatever. And they're dressed like I would wear, you know, just like nice clothes, and they would wear like nice, but like dance clothes, but they were also nice clothes, but it was also like, it was like somewhere between like high-end cocktail waitress and professional dance person. I mean, it was craziness. Oh God, yeah, that stuff made me crazy. It was hard.
Anyway, I'll probably edit that out. I don't want.
It's so good.
I don't want to have told that entire story. That was too much.
Oh, it's so good though.
where was your conservatory? What conservatory did you do?
Webster in
Oh, you
St.
went to
Louis.
Webster.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy about that, and might cause me to not be able to edit out the Thoroughly Modern Miller story now, is that because of those thespian conferences and festivals and stuff, I became friends with Peter Sargent from Webster.
Oh, he just died like a year ago.
Yeah.
Miss old Peter.
And I walk in to the hallway where all these guys are tap dancing and wearing their fancy outfits for the Thoroughly Modern Millie audition. And a door opens and out walks Peter Sargent from Webster University in his crazy tartan plaid outfit that he always wore, as sort of trademark. And he said, "Mike Rock, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I have this audition." And he said, "Oh, well, fantastic. Break a leg. How's it going? Blah, blah, blah." We talked for a few minutes. And that kind of like brought me down to earth because I knew Peter Sargent from a world where I was, a guy who was looked at as a kind of an authority or an expert in what I was doing, which was improv at these festivals or whatever. So just seeing him, kind of made me say, I got nothing to lose here. I'm all good here.
That's awesome. Oh man,
So
he
how
would
great
love that.
that you went to Webster and that that's a little kismet.
That is, yeah.
All that story.
That's really funny.
Might have to leave that story in now.
Ha
So there you are at Webster, and you were a Southern gal, and suddenly
I am.
you're in the Midwest. Did it feel like a big change?
It did. And that's what's so funny is so many times people who are not from the South, when I would tell them, oh, I went to college in St. Louis, and technically Webster's in a suburb, but it's like 15 minutes outside of the city, called a suburb called Webster Groves. And people be like, oh, so you stayed in the South for college. And I'm like, oh, friend, have you never been to St. Louis? It felt nothing. It did not feel anything the same to me. A huge thing very early on, I think it was the very first weekend I was there, they had like a conservatory barbecue where it was like kind of all the new students in the conservatory and the old students all come. And I'm like, oh yeah, I love barbecue. We get in the line, and I see hot dogs and hamburgers, and there were probably like some sausages or something, and I was like, oh, do y'all have barbecue? And they looked at me like I was absolutely, they're like, you're at the barbecue. I'm like, but do you have barbecue? They're like, yeah, this is all the barbecue. I was like, oh, I don't know what this is, but it's not where I'm from. Because we call barbecue's a specific thing. Cookout or grill out is what you do when you make hot dogs and hamburgers. So I was very confused right away.
That's such a classic regional discrepancy kind of a thing to run into, like soda and pop and Coke and whatever. Were you a kid who stayed at school all the time? Like, in other words, did you go back to Georgia frequently, or did you stay in St. Louis?
I pretty much stayed. I think that's actually where we never go anywhere for Thanksgiving usually, because in college I started not going because it's an 8-hour drive, and plane tickets were expensive.
You're a college kid.
Yeah. So I would go home for Christmas, and then I would go home in the summer, and sometimes I would have a summer stock job or something like that, but usually I would be able to go home for a little bit. But yeah, I rarely went home any other time. My freshman year, Robin Florence, who you may recall from Thespian Times many years ago, she went to Webster too, and we are both from Conyers, so I rode home with her a couple of times when she went. And I think I went home for fall break my freshman year. Yeah, I did, because it was 91, and I randomly got to go see the Braves in the World Series. They were playing World Series when I was home. But that was the only time I ever went home for fall break.
And I assume that, like, I didn't go to conservatory, but I assume that it was what, like, on steroids. I mean, it was theater 24/7.
Yeah.
That there are programs where might not get asked back the next year?
We had that. It was
You
called
did?
Cuts. It was after our sophomore year. You had to do an audition called a Cuts audition. And so you had to do a scene. If you were musical theater, you had to do, I think, 2 songs, 2 contrasting songs, and a Shakespeare monologue. And I think the non-musical theater had to do a scene and then a Shakespeare monologue and a contemporary monologue or something. And more than half of our class got cut. I mean, it
Oh,
was traumatic. So traumatic. It was horrible. They did away with it like maybe 5 or more years after we left, because people were like, this is insane. Why don't we just not pick people that we don't want to have come here? Like, what are we doing? Because I think we started as a class of like 30 something and we graduated maybe 14, something
wow.
like that. Yeah. And I mean, some people left, like it wasn't just Cuts, but it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal.
And in the what at the beginning, like when you first got there, did it feel kind of intimidating to just be at that level?
Yes and no. I mean, it was a little of both, I think. So one aspect of it that I'll never forget is, freshman year meeting other people in your class, and I only had 3 musical theater CDs. This was back when CDs were the thing. I had a recording of Hair, the Broadway cast recording of Hair. I had the Broadway cast recording of Evita, and I had the London cast recording of Evita. Those were my 3 musical.
I had
Those were
3
my
CDs. 2 of them were the same
2
show.
of them were Evita. And everyone else was like, "Oh my God, how do you not have?" And I don't know. I just like that wasn't. It had never really occurred to me much to like, oh yeah, I should have all these cast recordings of Broadway shows. I was just like, I don't know. I like to sing and do musical theater, but I also like to listen to some REM. That's what I
from
get my CDs
From Athens, Georgia.
from Athens, Georgia. Yeah.
Did it still feel like you were competing?
It still felt very competitive. And like your freshman year, you weren't allowed to be in any shows. Um, in fact, I think our whole first semester we couldn't do any scenes from actual published
No theater.
shows. Yeah. It was all like we learned coding and we learned architecture, a rudimentary architecture. No, that would have been great if we
Yeah.
had. Uh, um, yeah, it was very competitive, and like we would have our auditions in the Repertory Theater of St. Louis was on our campus, and so we would have auditions in the main Repertory Theater space, which is a huge, beautiful theater, and uh, everyone would watch. And so it was a really weird experience. So not only are you auditioning for shows, but you're auditioning for the respect and admiration, I guess, of your classmates and the upperclassmen
Oh,
and the freshmen. So because all the teachers are there, all the like faculty and everything are there, and then all of your peers are there too. So it was very competitive and really hard. And I'm starting to realize I'm not a competitive. I'm a competitive person in ways that I don't like, but I'm not competitive in that way. I'm not like, yeah, I'm gonna be the one. Everybody better watch out. Like I'm just not. That's just not me. But like playing a game or something, sometimes I can get weird competitive.
unless there's barbecue involved.
Then I'll get in your face.
And get out of my way. Did it prepare you? Do you think that going to conservatory prepared you in a way that like, you know, getting off the plane or train or boat or bus in New York City, like you were like, all right, I have what I need, or did you have to kind of relearn things?
It did in some ways. And I think part of it was like for me going to a school like Webster was a good choice in some ways because I think I needed that buffer between going to New York. Like I think some people could go from high school to NYU or Marymount or whatever school in New York and would be fine. I think for me that maybe would have been I would have just shut down. Um but in other ways it's like the faculty is so removed from what's really going on, in New York and And we learned the like fundamentals and the foundational stuff. But like, I think people who went to schools that were closer to New York were more in touch with like, okay, this is what people wear to auditions now. These are the kinds of songs people sing. These are the, I think we missed out on that piece of it. So you did have to sort of go, oh, I don't, okay, let me see. This is what people are wearing and doing. It was like we had the Midwest sensibility of what we were supposed to do in New York, and the 5+ years removed of our faculty who had been in New York, but now we're teaching. So there was a gap there that I think if you go to somewhere like NYU, or I mean, I don't know anything about NYU, maybe it sucks, I have no idea. But I mean, what do I have to lose?
It
I'm
has
not
an
trying to
okay
get in there.
reputation.
It has an okay reputation. But like, I feel like somewhere where it's like the teachers are working professionals, or who are like really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on, what it is to be a working actor, an auditioning actor in New York. Our teachers didn't have that because they lived in St. Louis.
Yeah. Did you go directly from St. Louis to New York, or did you go out on the road and travel? Did you like?
Well, I had a summer stock job after I graduated, so I went and did 3 shows at oh God, what's the name? University of Western Illinois, I think. It was like right near Ames. There's like the Quad Cities, like it
Yeah.
was in Macomb, Illinois. Um and then my boyfriend and I drove from there to LA, and then to Tulsa, which is where he was from, and then I flew home, and then I went to New York. So not directly, but pretty close. Few months.
How was the off-Broadway scene in New York when you got there? Did it feel I don't know, stimulating and refreshing? I know that as I moved there in 91-ish, and I just became part of the improv world, and the sort of like I guess the burgeoning alt comedy scene. But did Off-Broadway feel vibrant and alive?
It did to me, yeah. Like I really liked it. A lot of, and I mean, I went and saw Broadway shows, but I also saw shows that my friends were in, which were like off Broadway, and shows people recommended to me, which were off Broadway. And it did seem just amazing and cool, and like, yeah, this is what it's about, kind of thing. Of course, it's like absolutely unsustainable way to like financially not
You have
lucrative
to
at
have
all.
some sort of other income.
Yeah.
Tell me about Baby Wants Candy. How did you get? How did that come about?
Well, that group formed in Chicago in like 98, and I was not in Chicago. And then around 2000, I think I want to say it was 2010. I think so. They just enough people from the group had moved to New York that they're like, hey, you know what we should do? We should have auditions and then start doing shows here. And because they had sort of their group of people that had done it in Chicago, a few that were there, and then they had sort of a larger pool to pull from of people that those people knew. But then they were like, well, why don't we have auditions and just see what we don't know, who we don't know. And I ended up getting cast from that round of auditions, and then just, yeah, I kept doing it from there, and it was great. It was I was so hesitant to do it because I was weirdly intimidated of musical improv because of my musical theater background. And so it was one of these things where I was like, I was doing a lot of improv and I was feeling really good about my improv and enjoying it. And no one in that world knew that I sang or anything like that, really. And so I was like, oh, well, if I try to do this thing that's both of them and I suck at it, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, because then it's going to be like, what? But I should be good at this. It's like on paper. And so I think it was like I was scared that I would be bad at it. And then what would that mean? Did it mean, like, am I a joke of a human? Like, I don't know. I don't know what it means at that point.
Isn't that weird how that happens in our
Oh my
brains?
gosh. Oh, it's
So
crazy. And I mean, it was like people had been doing musical theater or musical improv in New York. It's not like I didn't know it existed. And I had like just started dipping my toe in when Baby Wants Candy had the auditions. And I was like, I signed up and I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, no, okay, just do it. Just go to it. It's fine. Who cares? Whatever. Just do it. It doesn't mean anything. And then I got it and I was super happy.
What is it about, what aspect of musical improv do you think improv people that are intimidated by it don't understand?
I think, well, it depends on why they're intimidated. Because to me, you don't have to be an amazing singer to be an amazing musical improviser, but you can't be like straight up scared of music or like not want to sing and not find joy in singing. And I think it would be very hard to be like completely tone deaf and do it. Like, that would be challenging for everyone. So it's not to say that like if you're, and that's a very small portion of the population, I feel like, is fully legit tone deaf. There's a huge gap between like being a great singer and being a singer that can do musical improv. To me, the thing about musical improv is if you're interested in it and you're good at improv, you're the exact right person to do musical improv, with the caveat that I said before of you can't be tone deaf. And you can't be scared. You can't be scared of music, because some people are. They like they're doing the scene and it's going great, and then the music starts playing and they're like, and you're like, you knew what was coming, bro. Like, I don't know what's happening right now. You're acting like Jaws is coming up on here. They get so freaked out, and it's like, no, don't be scared. The music is your friend.
Are there any tricks if you were teaching a musical improv class and people were like, what are some shortcuts or tricks or something like that? Is there such a thing? Is there such a,
You mean to get into doing it?
well, just to kind of bridge the gap between that moment of fear, you hear the accompanist starting to play, or maybe one of the other improvisers starts to go do or something, and the room is encouraging you to take it or to do a song. Are there any, is there anything that you say to people except for just go for it? Like, is there?
Yeah, I mean, one thing is the minute the accompanist starts playing, that's an affirmation to you that your scene has elevated to the point that a song could happen, which means you've committed, you've made big choices, you've made emotional choices. So their offer to you of the music is not just, oh, hey, here's more to add to the scene. It's definitely that, but it's also an affirmation that everything you've been doing is great. And here's a way to keep it going and elevate it. If it's a good accompanist, I mean, like, I think good accompanists, if they're like, if there's nothing to sing about, they just won't play, and they're right to do that, because then that's impossible. Then you're just like, oh my god, what are we going to do? And then I think the other bridge of it is, it's really, when you start singing a verse, you really should just be going off of whatever you were talking about, whatever that emotion was, and just putting that to music. And so it's not, you don't have to think about it, especially with verses, as anything too much more than dialogue. Now, you don't want it to go down the road of just like, and then we'll go to there, and I saw my best friend, and then I just ate snacks, and then la la. Like, it doesn't have to, you don't want to be dialogue in that way, which, P.S., not great dialogue anyway.
It was all right.
But I think it's like they think like, oh, well, now I have to come up with a song, and it's like, well, no, now you just have to sing what the scene was about, how you're feeling, and you're just reacting, but now you're just adding singing instead of just saying it. It's not, don't overthink it or be like, now it's the song, as though that's some separate entity from the scene and not born completely from the scene.
Good point. That's a good tip.
I've taught a couple of improv classes, a couple
like
musical
that.
improv classes.
I like that a lot. In New York, you were mostly doing stuff at the People's Improv Theater at the Pit, and were you also doing stuff elsewhere like the Magnet and UCB and that sort of thing?
I was, yeah. I was kind of doing stuff anywhere anyone would take me. I was sort of mercenary to an extent. I mostly did stuff at the Pit, but yeah, I did stuff everywhere.
What caused you to move to Los Angeles?
I think it was a couple of things. One of my best friends, Jack, is out here, and slowly but surely, so many of my collaborators and good friends that I'd worked with for a long time were moving out here. So that was certainly part of the draw. I think maybe the biggest part of it was I was getting to the point where I could feel myself turning on New York and not loving it anymore. And I was like, I'm not loving it anymore. And I didn't want to leave hating it. I wanted to leave still loving it and loving to go back. And so I kind of got in just under the wire on that, I think, because I was there for 20 years and it
Wow.
wears on you. And it gets hard. I mean, and then a practical reason was we were about to get priced out of our apartment, and my husband and I just had to sit down and go like, okay, so we're gonna have to move. We can either do a small move to Brooklyn or somewhere, and then probably in a few years do a big move to LA, or we can just rip the Band-Aid off and just do it, just go for it. And we decided to just go for it. And then I ended up winning some money on a game show, and that
What a
paid for us to
segue.
go here.
You're so good at segues. You are a Jeopardy champion, Ashley Ward. Tell me
I am.
how that came about. Were you in the business of auditioning for game shows on the regular, or what was that?
No. And what's funny is that's not the game show that got me the money to come here. So, but it all wraps up. You'll understand. So I always loved trivia. I would watch Jeopardy always, every night. I loved it. And then the show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire came out. Original flavor, Regis Philbin version. And they had the way you would qualify to be on the show was you would call this number and they would ask you like 5 questions, I think. And then if you got them all right or got a certain number of them right, you would be put in the drawing for the contestant pool. And every night I would do it. And I would say like once or twice I didn't qualify, but pretty much I always qualified and never got called to be a contestant. Around that time, I'm watching Jeopardy and they're like, hey, we're having auditions for Jeopardy. This is in 2001. We're having auditions for Jeopardy. Sign up here, call this number or whatever it was. And I did. And then I went and took the test, and it was like magical. It was like the test. It's like 50 questions in 15 minutes or something like that. And you have to write down the answers. This is how it used to be. And it was like, did they like know I was coming? It was like all my categories. I just knew I was doing really well. And then if you pass the test, I can't remember how many you could miss, but you had to do like a mock game just to make sure you weren't like, gonna pull your pants down or something in the middle of it. Like, I guess, I don't know. They were just testing for sanity or, because I mean, it's not like everyone who's on Jeopardy, you're like, man, that person, what a person. It's not about personality, really. They're not like looking for, it's not Price is Right, they're not. And then I did well on that. And then they were like, called me and were like, hey, can you come out here in 2 weeks to film Jeopardy? And I was like, well, okay. And I did. And then surprising everyone, myself most of all, I won my first game. And then I got second place my second game.
So how long, because I mean, I've watched Jeopardy, of course, but not in a long time, but how long is a game? Is a game like an episode, or is a game like over several episodes, or?
It's in real time. Like they took the commercial breaks. Alex Trebek was the host at the time. And he would, in the commercial break times, every contestant had a wrangler who would come and like bring them water and like, fix their hair and whatever. And
Barbecue, probably.
bring me a big old plate full of barbecue. My lipstick that day did look like I'd been enjoying some barbecue chicken, but that's a different story. It was very shiny and barbecue looking. But anyway, Alex Trebek would take questions from the audience. And then when the length of a commercial break was over, we'd go right back into it. So every game was literally the amount of time a game when you watch it takes. And then there'd be a very brief time between one game and the next where they would draw the name of who the next new contestant was, or contestants. And then they do it again. So they did 5 in a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And that winning that money, you went back to New York with a bag full of cash, and you were like, we're moving to LA.
No, because this was in 2001.
Oh,
And I went back to New York, and so this was also before they doubled all the prize money. So I went back to New York with my whopping like $4,000 or whatever it was I won. It wasn't that much, and a trip to the Bahamas, which we took. And then cut to 2015, and all these improvisers I know are being on the new Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which is now in syndication or something. And they're all like, oh, you should do it, blah, blah, blah. They're having a thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And so I go to take the test, and it was a real annoying process. You had to wait in this long line. And anyway, I take the test, then you pass the test, then you have to go talk to a producer again. I think just making sure you're not going to pull your pants down in the middle of the thing. And
you'd
and
think they would just
then
put suspenders on everybody, like so.
that would be smart.
Yeah.
And then you go talk to another producer who has a little camcorder and is filming you answering a question. And they're like, okay, so you're gonna have to, even if you know the answer right away, tease it out, like talk it through. They want to make sure you can do all that. And then they're like, okay, we'll let you know. So they let me know shortly after. I go and film it, and I won $100,000.
Holy macaroni.
And so that was how I moved to LA.
Wow. You know what's really weird about this, Ashley, and I'm not saying that I'm psychic, but I did last night have Who Wants to Be a Millionaire appeared in a dream for a moment. Isn't that weird?
I think
'Cause I
maybe
did
you
not-
are psychic.
Because I didn't know that about your game show history.
That's
at
so
all.
funny.
How was Hello Jack, the Kindness Show with your dear friend Jack McBrayer?
It was awesome. It was so amazing, especially because we shot it in 2021, starting in February to June of 2021. So it was like really just barely out of the, we're just edging out of the pandemic. And it had just been such a dark time, and there was just so much going on, and the weight of the world was a lot. We had just had, this election, and there was all kinds of stuff happening. And it was just so nice to go somewhere where the focus was about kindness and happiness and children and being good to each other and all these things like that. It was like, I don't know, it was just like the healing balm that I needed. It really, it was challenging in the way that filming anything is, and that it's long days and a lot of sitting around. And it was the most I had ever done, because I was there, I was filming that whole time, not every day, but I'd done like a day or two here or there, but I'd never done something like that. And so that was challenging, and I learned a lot. And yeah, I can't say a bad thing about it. It was amazing.
Do you think he's, do you think he's going to bring it back? I know he did one season.
We hope so. Yeah, we shot 18 episodes, and so they haven't released all of them, but we're also hoping that we get another season. And I really hope we do, because I feel like, he has a lot he wants to do, and he's so passionate about it. And I think it'd be great to have at least one more season, if not more.
You can't find, for anybody who doesn't realize it from seeing Jack on TV and stuff, you can't find a nicer person. This guy is just like, to say that he's kind of a 2022 Mr. Rogers is not a stretch of the imagination. And probably
it makes so much sense. Yeah.
There's an obvious Miss Rogers' Neighborhood connection to the Kindness Show as well. How great that you've known each other for this long, and you're able to work together as adults.
It was really, I was very fortunate, and it was great just to see him, because it's really, he kind of has just been like an actor who's gone from thing to thing, and this is really the first thing that he really has spearheaded that was he was super passionate about. It meant a lot to him, and he was the boss, and so to see my friend, who I like grew up being an absolute goof with, kind of being the boss man, and like, but also being this amazing performer, incredibly kind, knowing every single person's name, and having bits with like every crew person on the set and every child. Just like, it was it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also, you know, it's not a given that if you're friends with someone in high school or in college or something, that's you know, they get an opportunity and bring you in. That's not a given. That's pretty great also.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I had to audition and I had to be approved. And I think ultimately because, you know, obviously it didn't hurt to be good friends with Jack. Was not going against me. But what I've sort of come around to and reconciled myself with is that all they really had to do to like be like, look, we put her on the show, is give me an episode or two. But I got more and more as it went on. So I will take on that, like, I earned my place. I earned my time on the show, and it wasn't just handed to me or anything, which is, you know, I struggle with that. You know, at first I was like, oh God, you know, but then it's like, oh no, I did a good job, and I got more and more stuff.
Heck
on the
yeah,
show.
you did. You've done Aqua Teen Hunger Force. It must be fun to have done something that's such a iconic, you know, animated comedy show.
I had a very small part on it. Now, this is another Conyers person. Dave Willis is the guy who does Aqua Teen. He's the person who like wrote it. He plays Meatwad and Carl. And fun story, the reason Master Shake is played by Dana Snyder is because, well, not entirely the reason, but I introduced him. My sister and I introduced Dana because I went to college with Dana at Webster. We put those two together. And so I feel very proud about that. And then, yeah, it was great to do that. And then I did Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell, which was also Dave. So he'll throw me a bone every now and again, which is really nice. We did The Good Doctor together. His only play in high school was The Good Doctor.
See, folks, high school theater leads to things.
It does. I'm telling you, like I would have nothing without my high school theater connect.
Tell us about 50 Shades, the musical parody.
Oh, that was such a fun and weird thing. I was not a fan of the book. And then the folks behind Baby Wants Candy were approached about like, hey, you should write a musical of this book because it's such a phenomenon. And then I got brought on at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival where I was performing with Baby to help write it. And we did, and we put up one performance of it there. And from that, we did some rewrites and it got a tour, and then eventually we got an off-Broadway run, and it's played in like, I don't know, like 14 countries or something. I mean, it's been everywhere. It was so much fun to do. It makes you understand why musicals are so hard because I mean, this was a parody based on a known entity, and it's still hard, you know, it's still hard to do. But it was a ton of fun. I mean, it was like, what a dumb, fun thing that like I got some very modest checks for a long period of time for.
It's not game show money.
It's not game show money, but I mean, you know, and then I did it off Broadway for a little while. I played one of the characters for like 6 months, and then I think I came back when someone had to leave or something. But which was funny because, you know, I had moved to New York to do musical theater, and I sort of gradually moved away from that and started doing more and more improv, which then led me to do a musical theater show off Broadway. And in that time made me realize like, oh, I don't know that I like doing the same thing 8 shows a week. I don't know that that's for me.
That's the thing that improv does to you.
It breaks you.
It spoils you from that.
And I mean, this was a wildly fun and funny show to do. So it's not like you were doing, you know, like some boring piece of crap.
Yeah. Not that we would say no to a boring piece of crap if it was.
Yes, I'm available for every boring piece of crap out there. Please think of me for whatever southern boring piece of crap you may want to put up on the Great White Way.
If Ashley, if the pandemic ends tomorrow and the BA.5 variant is eradicated, or I don't know, if something magical happens, what's the first thing you do? What are you gonna do when the world opens up and you can do anything you want?
I think I'd like to go to Europe. I haven't been to Europe since the pandemic. And I used to go, I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival 6 times.
That's where I first met the Baby Wants Candy folks back in the day.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's what I would do. Is I really miss my husband and I were our 20th wedding anniversary is this year, and we were like, well, maybe we'll go to Italy, and then we kind of kicked the can down the road just to see what was happening. It was like, maybe we won't. I don't know what's going to happen in the fall. Let's maybe wait.
I should say, when you give advice or when people ask you questions about being a creator, being a storyteller, being an artist and an actor, etc., what do you say? There are people of all ages, sizes, shapes, and etc., who know they've got a story in them, who know they want to do something. Maybe they're thinking about moving to New York or LA, or maybe they're just thinking of writing a novel or auditioning for a musical. What do you say?
I say do it. Like, the worst case scenario is you move to New York, you hate it, and you have to move back. Like, there's moving trucks that go both ways. So you can always, like, there's almost no loss that you can really have in pursuing something. And if you feel passionately enough about it to make a big step, like starting to write a novel, which feels impossible to me, but I'm amazed anyone can ever do anything, honestly. Anyone can ever create anything, because it's as imperative as it seems impossible to me. Like, you're so driven to do it, but it also feels like, how could I possibly do this thing, so I don't know. I would always say go for it, like, and don't worry about if it doesn't work out, or if there's a title of show, which again, another high school person, Hunter Bell, who you may know from the thespian world, Hunter Bell wrote, and there's a song in that show called "I'd rather be 9 people's favorite thing than 100 people's 9th favorite thing." And I think that's such a great way to think about it. Like, everything you do doesn't mean like, well, there's no point in making this because it's not going to make me $1 million, or there's no point in pursuing that because I'm not going to become famous. Like, who cares? You made a thing. You made a hat where there never was a hat, to quote Sondheim, or misquote. It's ish quote. And that's wonderful. What a magical thing. I just taught a musical improv workshop last night, and I always say this because I genuinely feel it and I genuinely believe it. The first time after they as a group sang a whole opening number, improvised a whole opening number, I was like, hey, y'all just wrote a song that's never existed in the history of the world as a group, without sitting down and picking up a pen or paper. You just collectively came together and put your creativity and yourselves into it, and you made this song, and that's crazy. And they were like, yeah, okay, we're high school kids, we don't care. No, they were excited, they liked it, they were good.
That must be an emotional moment when you see that happen.
It is, because it's like you start out the day 30 minutes before, and they've never done this thing, and in I'm like, we've been here for 30 minutes, y'all, and you just did it.
That's great.
It is great.
Ashley Ward, thank you so much for being on the show.
Mike Rock, thank you for having me. You're a delight. I miss you.
Delight. I miss you too.
We used to see each other all the time.
Well, when the world opens up, maybe we will again. In Italy for barbecue.
Oh my God, have Italian barbecue. What could be sweeter? La dolce vita. Is that the phrase?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I did it.
Yeah.
Yay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching and or listening. And I hope while you're watching and or listening, you're safe and comfortable and there's no more pandemic. Fingers crossed. See you next time.
Bye.